Hi YouTube, it's Paul. I'm home alone again, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to make a video about why I think the moon landing is bullshit. And this is kind of a joke video, but I'm 100% serious about what I'm going to say. And I've done a lot of research to try to find the answers to these questions that I have, but I haven't found any satisfactory information or any scientific publications that explain these things. So I'm just going to go into my points of contention with this space feat that we achieved, quote unquote. Okay, so the first thing is landing on the moon. If you can think back to the video of the moon landings, the Apollo missions, what you see is somebody looking out a window, looking down onto the ground, showing the moon surface go by, and then all of a sudden they're dropping down onto the surface of the moon. This is very troubling to me. Like, the amount, to me, in my head, this would require quite a bit of fuel, rocket fuel, because every action, every force has an equal and opposite force pushing on it. So if the moon rover, or whatever, the moon module is coming in out of orbit speed, which is pretty high, it came off of the so what happened was the spaceship goes around the Earth, slingshots, goes to freaking the moon, does an orbit around the moon, and then goes onto the surface. It was part of it's a two-part ship. There's this one part of the ship stays up in space. The other part of the ship lands on the moon. And once the people on the moon are done, they go lift back up off the moon, reconnect with the rendezvous ship, and then go back to Earth. Okay, so to me this seems like it would require an inordinate amount of fuel to not only lift off of the Earth once, but to lift back off of the moon and go all the way back to Earth. That's my one point of contention, is how much fuel is necessary to get this module off of the moon's surface. I was not able to find that information. I looked pretty hard. It seems like it wouldn't be that difficult of a calculation to do if you knew about rocket fuel, but nobody had done that calculation that I could find on the internet. So if anybody knows anybody that can do that, that would be very helpful to me, because I'm just like trying to wrap my head around it. I looked at the fuel tank for this thing, and it might have been about the size of like a large ice chest. And when you're stopping a thing going like over 1,000 miles an hour, and you're able to make it land perfectly on the surface of the moon to the point where it goes from 1,000 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour with no help, no wind resistance to slow it down. Basically, they had to get it. Not only was it going down, they had to slow it down, its forward momentum, but they also had to turn it so it was facing perfectly up and going straight. Basically, like you see the videos, it looks like it's going straight down. That means it had to be almost floating down onto the surface of the moon, which is basically impossible. Despite the lower gravity, like, there's still at least a sixth of the Earth's gravity force on the lunar module, so it's like that still requires a large amount of fuel, like to do all the maneuvering, to do all the slowing down, to make it hover, to make it go straight down onto the ground. That's all part of the fuel thing. It's like, how is that even possible? Second of all, I mean, you must have seen, like, the fact that people actually had control of this thing. How could they know what was below them? You can't have windows below your spaceship when it's shooting like fiery gas. There's no way you could possibly see down there. You can't put a window underneath you and have you be able to see what's coming through. You can't see through the engine. How were they able to find a spot multiple times that had no rocks? They didn't hit one rock. They didn't fall in one crater. And it's pretty simple to see that there's craters up on the Earth. I mean, on the moon. Huge freaking craters that basically cover the whole moon. I don't care how smooth it looks, each little chunk on the moon, if we looked at it with a really powerful telescope, each little tiny little sand speck is probably about a foot tall. You can't tell. And yet none of these moon missions hit one rock. They all landed perfectly on nice flat land. Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Let's flash back to the Mars rover missions. They had to land in a very... Okay, they didn't really know what the surface of Mars was like. It's hard to tell, you know, despite our telescopes being pretty powerful, you can't really... I mean, Mars has an atmosphere. You can't see the exact details on the ground from millions of miles away. So what did they do with technology that was 20 or 30 years in advance of what happened in the 60s? How did they land their ship? They sent it and they freaking bounced it. They put it in a bunch of freaking big balls, balloons, and bounced it like 90 or 100 times. This thing, it came down so fast, and this is, you know, this is similar forces to what would happen on the moon. I mean, like maybe 3 or 4 times as much, but, you know, it's still comparable. I mean, you're not going to, like, it's easy, 3 or 4 times. That's not like 100 times. People want to act like you could freaking fly off the surface of the moon if you just jumped hard enough. No. It's really, it's almost a planet. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, when the Mars rover hit Mars, it bounced like an incredibly far distance. It bounced like 90 times, and this is like a 1,000-pound thing. The go gosh, go gosh. It was jumping like hundreds of feet in the air. And, you know, they had better technology than we do. Okay, so how were we able, in 1969, way before that, how are we able to, with no visual, able to stop a manned moon module with like very, very little fuel? It just blows my mind. Okay, so another point. Once the mission's done on the moon module has to lift all the way back up into orbit. And what do they have to do once they're in orbit? Okay, so here's the surface of the moon. They go, and then they fly, and then they have to rendezvous with the other ship that's already in orbit. So it's like the first ship flies, and then it meets up. How they didn't have like radar systems. They didn't have like that. They would have to know exactly when, like down to the millisecond, like rendezvousing in space when you took off from a foreign body. How are you supposed to know where the rendezvous ship is? It wasn't just sitting right above. It couldn't have been just sitting directly above you. You didn't come in on a straight path. Like, I mean, they didn't have any high-powered microwave radar systems that we don't have now, that could make it easy for them to do it, not for us. I mean, the wind, like, if you'd ever seen a rendezvous, I've seen NASA footage of orbit rendezvous between the space station and the space shuttle. And they fuck it up a lot. And they have way better technology than us. They had cameras, like high-def cameras in between the ships for docking. Like, you'd have to get up off the Earth, or off of the moon, speed way up, get up in, like, with what fuel? I have no idea, because, like, I'm pretty sure you would need way more fuel than they had to get back up off of the moon. And then you'd have to get up to the exact same speed as the orbit module. And not only that, you'd have to be there at the exact same time. Because if you miss something going 1,000 miles an hour, you only have one chance. You can't turn around. You can't look for it. You can't go cruising. No, you have to be there the first time, every time. They didn't lose one ship due to docking. They didn't lose one ship due to landing on a rock wrong. I mean, their only problem happened on the way. They were like, oh no, our oxygen tank's all messed up or whatever. Our oxygen filter. It's like, like we just are able to, like 40 or 50 years later, land a rocket on its own on a barge. Like, it's so clear in my mind, but it's hard to put my finger, I mean, on how to say it, but I mean it just makes no sense. Their computers were about as powerful as one of our TI-83 calculators, and they were able to basically blindly rendezvous with a ship and then go all the way back with what fuel? I have no idea. It's just total bullshit.